Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 8th webinar of Local Governments and Municipal Authorities Constituency to the UNFCCC. My name is Yunus Arikan. I'm the Director of Global Advocacy and also the focal point of Local Governments and Municipal Authorities Constituency. I'm just trying to open my screen, showing my screen so that I can take you through the presentation. Just bear with me a couple of more minutes. I assume it's not now visible, huh?
We can see your screen now.
Excellent, thanks, Patricia. So, as we mentioned, this is the 8th, let's say, episode, which is the language that being used over these years. Especially in the era of online virtual engagements. So in fact, this is a monthly webinar that LGMA Focal Point is hosting. Over these months, we had addressed a number of issues with guests, but also covering the most evolving agenda of this really interesting year, where we have seen postponement or cancellations of events during to COVID, but also a number of initiatives and processes, progress with the process as well. Just to let you know, all these webinars recordings are available at ICLEI's YouTube channel, so that you can access to the presentations as well as the videos as well. For today's agenda, for those who are new, how we are running these webinars is that we start with an overview of the process on the COP26 preparations. There are several minor updates though this month as well, and then we really focus on what has been the progress since the last meeting we had, which is end of August. And in that sense, we would like to take you through particularly what has happened during the UN Climate Week, what has happened on the UN redesign platform, online platform, just an update, a quick update on the Edinburgh Declaration and Marrakesh Partnership. Then we will highlight upcoming events. But during this webinar, particular attention will be on the UN High Level Week, which is relevant to us, and also Marrakesh Partnership would be, again, our focus today. So with this, and for those again who are new in this webinars or sessions, we are recording these sessions, and during the presentation you have the chance to type in your questions in the chat box or question box. Especially, it's question box is much better, question box is much better. And then after the presentation is over, we are opening the floor. You can either raise your hands or we can read from your statements from the question box. Thanks a lot for once again your interest and engagement. So for those who are new in this process, Paris Climate Agreement is a new era in the sense that over these 20 years before Paris Agreement, we had been running our advocacy through our roadmap negotiations and Friends of Cities, and the Climate Summit in 2014 were the main achievements or the main processes that we used, where we ended up in the Paris Agreement, the historic preamble paragraph, which recognizes the importance of engagement of all levels of government. This means what we have been doing as a voluntary action in the past, as a climate action at the city level or subnational level, is now becoming a part of the global machinery or architecture, so that we are part of the national and global processes. Therefore, anything that is coming from the Paris Agreement is sort of also a binding or applicable for us. In the Paris Agreement, we have several articles, but in the decision which implements Paris Agreement, we have much more reference in part of our engagement as non-party stakeholders. Since Paris Agreement, we are advancing our advocacy through LGMA, but we are introducing new elements like Friends of Multilevel Action, Talanoa Dialogues, Marrakesh Partnership, and we were all together particularly active in the Global Action Summit in San Francisco in 2018, as well as 2019 UN Climate Action Summit. The UNFCCC is a cyclic process. Every year there is an official host or presidency, which was elected at the COP the year before. This process is also continuous in the sense that the coming or outgoing presidencies also have a joint engagement, especially during the year, so that there is a good handover to the next presidency. These presidencies are defined according to the regional balance in the UN. For this year, we have a special case. The presidency is the longest serving presidency. Chile will be serving both 2019, 2020, and 21. And UK government is having the longest preparatory phase, which is, of course, in some sense, is a good opportunity. And they're also hosting this whole process with Italy. We will be hosting the pre-COP in 2021. In between, the traditional June discussions are now shifted for 2021, which is still not clear how it will be held in June. We have several individuals from Chile. We have the Minister of President of the COP, Minister of Environment, Carolina Schmidt, as well as high-level action champion Gonzalo Munoz. From the UK side, there are new introduction of new councils or new advisories. Official responsible is the President-designate Alok Sharma. We have Finance Advisor Mark Carney and High-Level Action Champion Nigel Topping. Since June, we have Eric Garcetti as part of the Friends of COP as Mayor of Los Angeles, and we look forward to his engagement in this process so that as LGMA, we can also support him, or we can make sure LGMA proposals are also addressed by him when he's engaging in the Friends of COP meetings as appropriate. This month in September, the UK delegation, the UK COP26 presidency have launched a new Cities and Regions Advisory Council. They had their first meeting virtually. It is a purely UK specific council, but it is addressing a number of local and regional governments. We will be looking forward for further updates from the UK presidency in terms of how this council will continue. For us, this is really exciting. It is one of those innovations that has not had been achieved. During these years, every COP presidency have been very actively involved, but this is also introducing a new element. We have seen Chile, for example, also running a lot of actions with the cities and subnationals. So every presidency have their own, let's say, introduction of new elements based on their strength and based on their, let's say, national procedures. So we look forward to the success of this council, and as LGMA, we're ready to support both the cities and regions attending this council, but also the presidency, so that we can make sure when we reach to Glasgow, the outcomes are helping our all overall goals. Every year there is certain tracking of the existing agendas. We participate through events, the online consultations or workshops, in-person workshops, but also in the decisions, draft decisions. Obviously this year now everything is on hold, especially there's no decision being adopted, even there are meetings. But I think UN is also advancing on a track that while we are foreseeing in the next 1 year or so the pandemic will still prevail, they will not stop. It's not just UNFCCC, but all the UN agencies are trying to find innovative ways that even through online processes, there may be some decision making with its own challenges. So let's stay tuned on that. For us, the priorities of the LGMA and the priorities of the presidency, it will be good that there is an overlap. We have always benefited from this. So overall, we have seen a good, let's say, mirroring of our work on raising ambition, climate finance, circular economy, nature, and expanding the global action beyond ministers of environment, but also to communities like culture, but in particular urban ministerial. It's still up on our agenda, and this vertical integration is, of course, the biggest agenda. Over these months, there are several processes going on. We would try to make a revised summary by next month in terms of what has been achieved in this multi-level action COP vision. And I will come to this into the next slide, because we already have a proposal that will be connected to the Daring Cities agenda. But our partners involved in all these agendas are significantly making progress. Just one example, a GAP fund was announced last year, but it was officially kicked off this week, last week during the UN high-level week, so that for all agendas we can comfortably say that there's an interesting outcomes coming up. So we are hopeful that we will bring the results to Glasgow as appropriate. One important thing that we are now seeing over the past month is the platform for redesign 2020. This was an innovation by the Minister of Environment of Japan. Minister Koizumi was personally very, very passionate in introducing new elements of work. He hosted this event on the 3rd of September. It was impressive with 50 plus ministers, mainly environment ministers, but others as well. It was innovative in the sense that it opened the platform for submitting the recovery, response, and redesign processes or activities or plans of the governments. This is now managed by IGES as a support institution, and UNFCCC is endorsing this process. During this event, it was around, I think, 6 hours event. One special session was dedicated for stakeholders. In that session, ICLEI Africa Regional Director Kobe Brand represented in particular to communicate the voice of both subnationals, but also from the African perspective. During that event, Mayor of Yokohama, Mrs. Hayashi also intervened via video on behalf of Japanese local governments and ICLEI Japan. On the website, you can see uploaded videos. Originally, ICLEI was there first with its first Vice President Kathy Oak. Now we have videos from C40 and Regions 4. That platform is open for additional videos so that partners could still send their comments and their documents. We are very excited throughout this 3 sessions, and particularly the discussions, the vision of the Minister of Environment of Japan, and ICLEI will particularly like to follow up. Those who have followed, this was a particular unique moment in time in Japan, because just before the event took place on 3rd of September, the Prime Minister of Japan resigned due to health reasons. The government was established with the appointment of a new Prime Minister, and he immediately announced his cabinet. The good news, the Minister of Environment of Japan, Mr. Koizumi, has reinstated his position as the Minister of Environment. So what he kicked off with this redesign will continue forward, and ICLEI not just had welcomed this initiative and contributed to dissemination within the LGMA community, but we as ICLEI would like to see how we can engage to connect this vision to our action, especially for transformative actions for climate neutrality and other COVID-related efforts beyond just recovery. But it is really a paradigm shift, and that needs significant resources, significant planning, but redesign. This perspective can really be an opportunity for all of us. So the links, you can see that, and we encourage all of you to visit this website and stay tuned for further updates. Last week was a marathon of the UN high level. Those who are familiar, this is the time when heads of state convene in New York at the General Assembly. This is the peak season for diplomacy, and this is the moment where remarkable moments are seen by addresses by leaders, some announcements, some disputes. Every year this has been watched by the global politics being on the radar. Obviously, due to the pandemic, it is now turned fully virtual. It has advantages and disadvantages, but overall, it was even even easier for at least not necessarily interaction among the leaders, but the world watching this process a bit more, because there was a continuous webcast and a number of online engagements. This year, every year there is, in addition to traditional leaders' statements, the UN General Assembly has a specific agenda based on the time and the priorities. For this year, it was obviously 75th anniversary of the United Nations. It was a year-round engagement. Therefore, it in fact was concluded, at least concluded the first phase, because the UN Secretary General and UN General Assembly has decided that it will be not just an input or online consultation, but also it will be implemented throughout the year, so that it will be hopefully connected to the ongoing efforts of the UN Secretary General or UN reform. In that sense, there was one day dedicated spatial session where heads of state intervened with 3-minute speeches, whereas in the rest of the week, heads of state discussed their own priorities. Sometimes there were speeches like 40 minutes, which President of France, Emmanuel Macron did this year. There had been cases, there are hours and hours of speeches in the UN General Assembly. Luckily, this time it didn't last that long. But the UN 75 specific day on the 21st of September was also remarkable in the sense the UN Secretary General had elevated his also efforts to convene the global powers, the global leaders, to be more ambitious on COVID, more ambitious on climate, and more ambitious on nature. So we recommend you to have a look at this. Especially the speeches of UN Secretary General, but several national statements were very interesting. We have heard, for example, Angela Merkel, the German Bundeskanzler and the Chancellor of Germany, in her remarks, she also referred to cities. So it will be good to have a track of all the leaders who have referred to the cities in that sense. But we know several of them have done this. During the week, several announcements came up. For example, the Food and Agriculture Organization launched its Green Cities program. This was a UN-wide mobilization, and several networks, including UCLG, ICLEI, C40, expressed their endorsement and announcement of their collaboration with the FAO. This is particularly important because next year, the UN Secretary General will host a UN Food System Summit in 2021. FAO is not the only organization on food, because the summit is Food Systems Summit. Food production is one aspect of it, but food waste, healthy food, or alternative ways of food production will come onto the scene. Therefore, an initiative from FAO is helpful to prepare, come up with the ambitious outcomes in the next year's summit. So in that sense, it was important. With regards to subnationals and how local and regional governments engaged throughout the week, obviously, Global Task Force have released its response to the UN 75, which was a year-round consultations. It was consisting of a report, but it ended up with a website, dedicated website, and numerous video messages were also communicated. So Global Task Force have managed to showcase our engagement in the new generation of inclusive multilateralism. That was the key message, that the next phase of UN should be much more open for local and regional governments. In that sense, in addition to its contribution to Global Task Force, ICLEI also released its blueprint to engage United Nations in the new era with local and regional governments. That consists of four, let's say, cornerstones. During the week, New York City, who was championing the New York City Declaration on VLRs, they also hosted a special event which announced that now we have 200 VLRs being submitted or prepared or under preparation. That was also remarkable compared to the progress since 2018. At the SDG Action Zone, there were several events hosted by either cities or their networks. The summit, or let's say this 2 weeks in the UN high level, included also one specific day on the 24th of September, which is the anniversary, or let's say follow-up from the 2019 UN Climate Action Summit. That was also the moment where several progress was made in terms of some statements and some announcements. One of the very important announcements came from China. China announced of carbon neutrality by 2060. Obviously, this date is later than the one that is agreed in the Paris Agreement, but China, as one of the biggest players in this space, who have already announced its peaking of climate emissions by 2030, obviously is a major announcement. And we have always seen this exponential, let's say, increment instead of incremental, with the exponential growth of ambitious climate action. Once you have such a target, it is possible to expect that it can even be earlier, because once you're over the threshold, the spillover effect of technologies, policies, and partnerships make it much more easier that you can reach to your goals before the announced date as of today. So China emission carbon neutrality, climate neutrality by 2060 is extremely valuable. What happened in collaboration, or in, let's say, in response in this space from the subnational side, obviously Climate Week New York City by the Climate Group was a major mobilization. I think it was around 400 sessions around through 1 week. It was remarkable in terms of mobilization. There were several events, but one remarkable announcement also came from state of California, which is a ban on internal combustion engines by 2035. I think this is one of the most ambitious, let's say, target as such. A couple of weeks before Seoul announced that they will ban diesel cars from their municipal fleet, but combustion engines ban by 2035 is one of the most ambitious, and it's a state level commitment. It's of course also coming from the country of United States, where is also prepared for presidential election in November. So one of the most pioneers of climate action in the US making this announcements, which is mirroring some of the commitments of China, could give us the hope that that the major powers are still, at least their stakeholders or at different levels of governments, are trying to strive to accelerate climate neutrality achievements or progresses, so that the rest of the world could also contribute. Or with this encouragement, like EU also coming with 2030 targets for 60% or 55%, to make other nations also be much more ambitious, so that by the time we reach to COP26, we are able to be confident that we will be having a new phase of NDCs. Meanwhile, C40 also convened its the Divest Invest platform with 12 mayors committing for divestment. This also is in line with also what ICLEI has been also tracking. For example, within ICLEI network, we have more than 40 cities who have announced divestment. So these kind of additional commitments are really welcoming, and it's encouraging that we are opening doors for ambitious action every moment. This year, one of the uniquenesses of the UN Climate Week, UN High Level Week, is a specific focus on biodiversity. This was a result of the 14th COP of the biodiversity held in Sharm el Sheikh in 2018, which was asking for a high-level event in the UN. This was scheduled to be, in fact, today on the 30th of September, under the auspices of the UN President of President of the UN General Assembly, which this will be held today. This will be the first UN summit that will be had at the heads of level focusing on biodiversity. So that is the biggest achievement, remarkable. In the climate space, we started to get used to address by heads of state, but in the biodiversity agenda, this was never held possible. It was either at the ministers of environment level, or rather other ministers. Not even the prime ministers or other ministers did not have a focus on biodiversity. So this summit, having at the UN and at the heads of state level, will definitely be changing the game or leveraging the effort, so that by next year, when we reach to Kunming for the 15th COP, that we would be able to reach out a good deal for nature. In support of the summit, a number of global mobilization was held. One of them was an initiative of UNDP with a number of partners, including ICLEI, Cities Biodiversity Center for Nature for Life Hub. It was a 4 days of event. It was magnificent in terms of the number of leaders and stakeholders engaged in that. And just 2 days ago, it was actually an effort to prepare the UN summit today. A leaders pledge was announced, which was facilitated by WWF, but it gathered around magnificent 50 heads of state, as well as local and subnational leaders who are supporting a pledge for nature. If you look at this, Mayor Valerie Plante now will be speaking today at the summit on behalf of ICLEI as its global ambassador. As far as we know, she's the only local and subnational representative at this summit. She will definitely be referring to the audience with the connection to climate neutrality, but asking for a global deal for nature with a strong engagement of local and regional governments. During the Nature for Life, we had a number of representatives from London to Bogota, from Tirana to Montreal. They were all part of the Cities with Nature platform. And in the leaders pledge, you can see the statements from Montreal Mayor Valerie Plante on behalf of ICLEI, as well as Mayor of Bogota also endorsing and contributing to the leaders pledge. So it was a remarkable 2 weeks. And we are confident that the networks, the collaboration among all partners, and the ambitious visionary leaders, we made it possible that the UN High Level is also resonated at the local and subnational level as well. So next slide. Over this week's, an important announcement came from Scotland. Edinburgh Declaration was released, which was a result of an Edinburgh process that was already also addressed in the LGMA space in June. We had followed it. Edinburgh Scottish government, in collaboration with CBD Secretariat, as well as a number of networks like Regions for ICLEI Global partners, as well as Committee of the Regions and numerous partners. They've run a marathon of an outcome document is now produced. This is now open for signature. This will be also be a key moment for us from now until next year's Kunming Bidar Summit. And it was very good that this was particularly released before the UN high-level week. So we commend the Scottish government and all the partners for this result. Now let's go to Marrakesh partnership. Over these weeks, we have been working with the high-level champion support team, UNFCCC Secretariat. ICLEI was leading the waste and consumption, and UNEP was leading the built environment. You may remember this structure, the skeleton was now agreed. We have gone further. The global ABC, the Global Alliance for Building and Construction, continues to serve to the built environment process, but waste and consumption was a new group. Obviously, it was a new, let's say, way of work. It introduced new opportunities. We had new partners like UN Habitat, Ellen MacArthur Foundation, numerous other colleagues who have joined our weekly calls. As the focal point or co-leader of this group, ICLEI proposed that this process has a focus on zero waste, 1.5 degree living, and social equity, and all the partners have welcomed these efforts. So we are now in the process of finalizing the outcome document, which is now already shared with a draft view with the champions team, but it will also be receiving additional input so that by 14th of October, we will be able to present these documents. In the structure, you may refer that you have to have a theory of change, you have to have several mapping of stakeholders, initiatives, and proposals for including new initiatives. So now this document is, compared to that, we have started relatively later than the other thematic groups of the Marrakesh Partnership. I think we are now in a confident zone that waste and consumption will be addressed from different angles from the discussions onwards. I think that is the most important essence of this working group. We're also very happy to see the progress from the built environment, which is also enjoyed significant support from the high-level champion support team. So you are more than welcome to contribute to this process over the next couple of weeks as well. During this high-level week, Race to Zero campaign of the UNFCCC Climate Action Champions announced new data of how mobilization is evolving. There is also a release of a report which says that the commitments now is covering in emissions that is equal to the whole emissions from the US. That was, I think, a communication in terms of to support the US stakeholders on the way to presidential election in the next month. The effort of Race to Zero, the new engagements will be now much more relevant to the way they are complying with the minimum requirements, which is pledge, plan, proceed, and publish. We as ICLEI are working with a group of around 200 of our members, and even it's going to 300. However, the minimum pledge, the minimum requirements are clarifying certain, let's say, criteria or certain requirements. Over this couple of weeks and months, ICLEI was involved in the expert committee to define these targets, but we have expressed our proposal to the champions. The current definition may be a bit too much rigid or too much limiting. So we have suggested an alternative language, which is not a revision of the current requirements, but an amendment, so that by the time we reach to COP26, we can comfortably think about thousands of cities. However, this requirement to ask for climate neutrality goals by 2040s, but an additional requirement of a 2030 target with a fair share of 50% of global emission reductions is for us a bit too much ambiguous, and it's not very clear. And if we put this as a requirement, we will have serious let's say drawbacks that all these cities may have to withdraw because they may not be able to fulfill this requirement. So our suggestion in terms of language is stating that this 2030 targets should be included, and it should be compatible with 1.5 degree goals of the IPCC where available, so that if you don't have it as of today, it will still be not making you be excluded from the Race to Zero list. So that is our effort, and we hope we will be able to reach to some consensus with the champions. In the next couple of days, over the 3 weeks, one of the biggest agendas we will be focusing on will be on the daring cities. Now, this has become the largest mobilization of urban community this year in 2020. We have 80 sessions with 300 speakers and around 3,000 registered participants. And in this regard, the next LGMA webinar in October will be on 20th of October, so that we will cover a bit more broader topics. We will also have a focus on climate action pathways. On the 14th of October, we'll have a special TEDx Daring Cities. It will be part of the TEDx mobilization, and it will be an update on how we dare to go climate neutral, which will be held in 3 sessions, so that worldwide we can have from east to west all interested and involved colleagues, and we're already very happy to see the number of diversity of cities and regions speaking. So we encourage all of you to join us, register yourself and attend a number of those cities. We know so many of LGMA partners have already been submitted their sessions, including side events. So we are excited that this will be really a great mobilization ahead of the busy agenda in the year ahead for the NDCs. Last is our immediate, let's say, upcoming events. Actually, today, that's not seen on the web, but in the slide, but we have the Mannheim Conference, European Sustainable Cities and Towns Congress is taking place. We have also today taking place Urban 20 Summit, and today the Biodiversity Summit is taking place. On the days ahead, in October, we will focus on the daring cities, but in November, we will have very busy agenda. There will be a special virtual congress in Africa, Local Climate Solutions for Africa. November dialogues, the agenda is about to be released. It will be from 3 to 19th of November. Just last week, it was announced that there will be a special session of the negotiators, or let's say negotiations community of the UNFCCC in the last week of November. And lastly, this was announced last week by COP26 presidency, the French government, and the UN, that on the 12th of December, there will be a virtual 5th anniversary or 5th celebration of the 5th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. And we are hearing that City of Paris will also be defining or developing a number of agendas in order to make sure local and regional governments continue to act as the custodian of the success of the Paris Agreement. So I think with this, we have come up to the end of our presentation of today's webinar. You have several links available. So with this, I can now conclude my, let's say, immediate presentation, and we can open the floor for questions, remarks, updates, or clarifications from the participants of this webinar. The floor is yours. You can raise your hands, or we can open you to the microphone so that you can intervene personally, or you can type your questions if you want. While waiting for you, I will just get a sip of my coffee. So I see a number of colleagues from Japan to Scotland. Feel free to share your views. In the afternoon session, we're expecting again European and Americans. I see Carlos from FMDV. It's good to hear Carlos engaged for a long time. He was absent. He was having additional agendas, and he had additional colleagues supporting in this process. So Carlos, let's hear your voice. The floor is yours. Carlos, you can unmute yourself. You want me to help you? So Carlos is having difficulties, I guess. There is a comment from Susan Alden in registration for Daring Cities. Yes, of course. Daringcities.org is the place where you can register yourself. As I said, we are already close to 2,000, and we're expecting in total 3,000 registered participants. This will enable you to navigate and access to the recordings of the 80+ sessions later on. The plenary sessions on Wednesdays will be open for webcasted globally, but the breakout sessions in the weeks will be open for registration for participants. So we encourage you to be connected to a global audience if you want to be more actively engaged in the discussions. I see now Carlos is now, unmuted. Carlos, the floor is yours. Carlos, we hear you, I guess, if you speak. Meanwhile,
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Carlos.
Okay, sorry, I'm on in the street to go and have a COVID test, so it's a bit weird. No, I'm very happy to talk to you again. It's been a long time, and thank you for giving me the floor. Just as FMDV, because we are really developing our main instruments and mechanisms on financing. I was interested in not that much in all these events taking place, but more like on the discussions that you guys have with the NDC partnership when it comes to going to support the countries at the domestic level to take action at the subnational level with vertical integration, etc. Did the dialogue go anywhere this last month, or are we still stuck? And don't we have means to benefit from these events to promote something at this level of action, meaning really going with the countries and the NDC partnership or other initiatives like those to really co-act at the right level? Sorry.
Sure. What I mean, that was I didn't want to go to details, but on the 20th of October, where we would have a specific session on the LGMA in the Daring Cities, and there we will have a special discussion on NDC and multi-level implementation, in the sense that during this couple of months, for example, we hosted an important event in May with the global collaboration of partners from ICLEI, UCLG, GCOM, UNDP, UNEP, and UN Habitat. Several outcomes are coming, for example, regional and locally defined contributions is coming up with a guidance from the GCOM. With NDCP, we are involved in 7 countries in the CAIP program. There are several efforts, like additional guidance is prepared by UN Habitat on integrating human settlements into the NDCs. So there is a numerous diversity of efforts. The COT, the Coalition for Urban Transition, is working on a new report with some selected targets. So it's here and there, and NDCP is one of them. Let me answer in that sense. But we feel it was important to have this climate week or UN high level week. Now we'll have November dialogues. I think with this, it will be much easier for us to go towards to the countries and to make sure that the next couple of months, that it is not mobilization globally, but working at home and making sure that NDCs are presented. Several countries have already been announcing that they will bring their NDCs by COP. both from north and both from the south. So you fully are correct. And if there is anything that FMDV wants us to engage, we're more than happy to hear your offers, and we can connect to that. So I hope this was a kind of a response to your proposal. I see Serafin from COSLA. Serafin, the floor is yours, please.
Hello. Just to comment quickly. I mean, the issues you raised. I mean, I think I think we are getting into. I mean, after the delays of this year and the obviously uncertainty and so on, even these virtual meetings we are having now in the autumn, be that they're in cities or Road to Zero, which I'm happy that we are cooperating with ICLEI and the other colleagues of the LGMA. I think they are shaping up to start driving the messages we want towards the local dimension of the expected deal there. So in that respect, it's just to I think that, you know, complex as this is, we are start getting to shape, and the next 2-3 months might be crucial to actually get us to an ambitious profile in the negotiations, or like precious elements, national element in the negotiations, and in the eventual deal next year. And I think that in that respect, we are getting there. We obviously domestically we're trying to press for the same the same issues, as to make sure that the LGMA discussions are reflected in a number of domestic discussions on this particular issue. So I think, you know, just to say that, you know, where things are getting into shape, I believe, and the extent of our cooperation is getting into the right direction, which is, considering what happened this year, is no minor feat. So, and particularly thank you to Yunus and ICLEI for the work he's been doing in terms of facilitating this. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks, Serafin. Just building on this, in our mailing with the links to this webinar, we will circulate you this agendas of 14th of October and the 20th of October as well, so that you can have a look at how we are trying to connect the climate ambition and as well as the UNFCCC process. We are very happy, for example, on the 14th of October, we'll be also joining with Susan Aitken, who will be welcoming COP26 next year, but we're also discussing with the Scottish government in the closing of the plenary. We have confirmed COP26 presidency's interest to communicate via video message. Both champions are with us. In the Road to Glasgow session on the 20th of October, for example, we would like to have a presentation of these climate action pathways, for example, not just by the human settlements, but energy, transport, land use, the core, let's say, sector relevant, let's say, teams that are already working on also actions by local energy programs, so that our members could be introduced to this way of work in the UNFCCC. For example, for the session on the 20th of October, we want to design it particularly for Latin America, but we want to have a special similar session in the LOCs, and so that African cities and regions can be introduced to this concept during their event, so that we will make sure every region is receiving as much as possible this information from now until next couple of weeks and months, so that with the hopefully the anniversary of Paris Agreement, hopefully elevating some more momentum in the months over the next couple of months, that at the national level domestic processes are strengthened, and we are hoping, for example, we are expecting an ambitious outcome from Japan. Now that Minister of Environment has reinstated that, he already said that there will be a third NDC coming from Japan. Those countries who have been opening the doors for us that we have heard, for example, Rwanda was very exemplary, and they will be hosting, together with the government of Rwanda, ICLEI will be hosting the local climate solutions for Africa, so that we're trying to make the best use of our existing channels. So you're more than welcome to contribute with additional comments, and we are also looking forward to additional contributions and leadership of COSLA as well. We are expecting there will be some more additional announcements from the UK COP26 presidency as well, but we will just wait for their appropriate timing from their side. Any additional comments or remarks for the time being? I see no new hands raised. I also don't see any new question marks. What we all know, everybody is very, very busy with the number of ongoing agendas. As we said today, at least 3 events are taking place. Urban 20, Mannheim, European Sustainable Cities and Towns Congress, and in New York, UN Biodiversity Summit. So 30th of September is a magnificent day. We are proud that all our partners are engaged as appropriate there. So we wish them the best of success. And if there is no further comments, we could announce this session is closed, and then we can focus on our efforts on other areas. And you will be receiving additional mailings from our side, and anything you wish us to announce, feel free to inform or alert. With that, I'd like to announce that this session is now closed. Thank you, and have a nice day and evening and afternoon.